Hey everybody, welcome to Grimm's Forge Gaming. Today we are going to cover my hybrid sorcerer, THOR, and let's jump right into the build. Couple things about the build also. I would say this is very fun. It's a very good build for PVE content. You can solo most normal dungeons, almost any normal dungeon, unless there's a mechanic that requires 2 or more people. And you can solo vet dungeons on this, so it is definitely a PVE build. And then in the way of PvP, it does well in Battlegrounds, it does well in Imperial City. Right now we are in CP Imperial City, and where you'll run into a problem is dueling with this build, and it's usually comes down to the fact that the resources, the situation with the max resources. You can see that we've only got like just under 24,000 max stam and 24,000 max magicka, and that's because on a hybrid build you use abilities from both fields. But I can tell you that when we line up our burst on people, they feel it, okay? And so that's a lot of fun. I will stick around all the way to the end of the build video here, and I will have some clips or highlights of a BG I just ran. And we went 14-2 in the BG, and the times where we did die, I think one of them was to ridiculous proc sets going on and getting hit by 9 or more K proc stats. There's Icy right there doing his, getting warmed up, ready to run sewers. So and then the other time was resources. So it's going to take a maturation process when you're playing a hybrid build. If you've never played one before, you can play a hybrid build and be completely ineffective at it, but to play a hybrid build and be good at it in PvP, that's tough. There's a lot of juggling, a lot of balancing that has to happen between both your resources and your damage output. So there's the disclaimer. PVE, no problem, all day, every day. You're not going to parse really high numbers on it. And then PvP, yes. Battlegrounds, yes. CP Imperial City or Cyrodiil, yes. Dueling, probably not. I don't think you want to stand and go blow for blow with somebody on this. It's not a dueling build. So, all right. So, first thing to note is we are running Torque of Tonal Constancy. It's very important to have the Torque on this build because our max magicka and max stamina are so low. And as soon as we hit that 50% threshold, we end up driving the other stat up. And so what will happen is we'll regularly be driving with under 50% in either one or both, and we'll benefit from that Torque of Tonal Constancy. So that's an extra 450 recovery, and that's nice. Now when you run a mythic item, it generally breaks up your monster set, unless you run a front bar back bar setup, which we are not on this build. We are running 2 5 pieces and a mythic. And so the first set that we are running is Mechanical Acuity. And the reason I'm running Mechanical Acuity is when you're allotting your CP points for this build, and we'll get to the CP at some point, but when you're allotting your CP points, it's very hard to put enough points into all the fields for all the damage output, different damage outputs that you have. You know, we're addressing our magicka, then we're addressing our stamina, and then we're addressing our direct damage. And so I couldn't put points addressing like crit or crit value, and so anyways, Mechanical Acuity ended up answering, being the answer for that. Basically, when you deal direct damage, you gain unerring mechanical vision for 5 seconds, granting you 100% critical chance for this effect can occur once every 18 seconds. And so it's got 5 seconds of just everything you're doing is crit damage, which is great, because our damage, if we line up our damage on people, the second we get everything lined up on them and then we start doing our rotation, Mechanical Acuity instantly procs, and so that first initial burst on people is dangerous. It's very dangerous. Okay? We are running a two-hand Nirnhoned Maul on the front bar. Now I can tell you this, we would probably be in the 47 to 5k weapon damage and spell damage on this build if this glyph on here was a weapon damaging glyph. This build is a 5 medium 2 heavy. Okay, you could run this in heavy also when you run mechanical acuity, so that's an option as well, but your overall weapon damage would be less because you're missing out on the agility passive for medium armor. So we're going to spend a little bit of time explaining how hybrids work and how we put this all together and how our damage lines up. On the back bar, we've got mechanical acuity also, and you can see we're running defending, and then we got reinforced. Our armor setup on this guy is a hodgepodge. It's very expensive, like as far as quality. You can see this is purple, but then this is gold. It's very expensive to put builds together, let me tell you. And as an example, you can look at our rings. Both of our rings are only blues still. And so we would squeeze out a little extra weapon damage if we went purple. It would probably another 60 to 100 weapon damage between the two of them if we went gold with both of them. So hitting 5k weapon spell damage on this build, absolutely doable. And you can also see our torque of tonal constancy. We still have the triune trait on there. We didn't go infused with that, so we could definitely hit that 5k mark. If you are going to be a hybrid, there are multiple ways to run a hybrid, and so the next set when we look at it is Pellinel's. And the Pellinel set, you can see it gives you max health, stamina recovery, magic recovery, and then it says your spell and weapon damage both become the highest of 2 values. And so that's how we're able to achieve that, 4k to 5k weapon and spell damage. I can tell you this, that between 4 to 5k spell damage is a lot. That's high, and so that's really nice. On the weapon damage side of it, it's adequate. It'll get the job done. 4 to 5k, you should be able to get most people out of there, and so that works out really well. So mechanical acuity and Pellinel's with torque of tonal constancy, and then we are running Molokina that gives us just a boost of weapon damage, spell damage. Like we said, we are 2 heavy, and then 5 medium. Okay, and a couple things. I think torque of tonal constancy is definitely the way you need to go if you want to run the Ring of Wild Hunt, or if you want to run something else, maybe Pale Order. Those would work as well. I would not put Malakath on this because you have mechanical acuity when you deal critical damage, right? When you deal direct damage, you get unerring mechanical vision, and all your damage is going to be 100% crit, and that doesn't happen when you're wearing Malakath's band. So this build would not work with Malakath's band, but Ring of the Wild Hunt, you could drop that there. Pale Order, you could drop that there, and you would just need a mechanical acuity neck piece, infused weapon damage. So that is an option for you. This build does play fast. The reason it plays fast is because our armor buff gives us major expedition, and so we basically just reapply it often because we're cruising around at plus 30% movement speed, applying that on command. So let's buff up and look at the stats here. See here we've got max magicka 24,000, 28,000, just under 29. Our recoveries are fairly low, but we'll get into that. You can see that we're at just under 4,300 weapon damage. Like I said, if we had the weapon damage glyph, we'd hit 4,700, 4,800, no problem. And there's a couple other things we could do. Continuous attack and things like that would put us at the 5k mark. So, and like I said, 5k spell damage hits really hard. 5k weapon damage gets the job done. Let's buff up again. There's a couple options that you could run on this build. We'll talk about that. Right now we're just under 28,000 spell resistance and physical resistance and about 2,200 crit resistance, and that's fine. You can see our penetration, we have 0 pen. Against the really tanky people, we will feel that. We can do damage to the really tanky people, but we have to line everything up perfectly, and then mechanical acuity procs, and everything goes boom all at once. And so we can get them out even with no pin on this, but this is where you get into the problem with allotting your CP points on a hybrid, and probably why you don't see a lot of hybrids. My buddy Bacon and I were talking about that today. Like hybrids are a very rare thing in ESO, and it's because they're so freaking hard to play or to figure out. Like, how can we optimize or get the most amount of damage? I like the rotation I have. There's no doubt that I can turn out damage, but it's, can I turn out damage and still sustain and fight outnumbered and all these other things that you can do a lot easier on other classes. And so anyways, when we pop a potion, you can see what happens to, jump on our back bar also here. So when we pop a potion, our recoveries go up a little bit more respectable numbers, and that's fine. This gets the job done. We'll explain why. And we're on our sorting board right now, and you can see it, we're at 31,000 resistances. Couple things, I can get this to cap by allotting our CP points differently, and we'll talk about that when we get there. And also, if we were to sub out an ability, and put in another one, we could get major and minor. See, right here we have major resolve, and we could get minor resolve also by slotting another ability. So sorry, I was spacing there. Okay, let's get into how this works, how this ticks. Okay, unbuffed right now, you can see that our wrecking blow does just under 11k. Buffed up, it'll do 13k, I think, 12k, 13k. The reason we went with this over Dizzy Swing, I was a little up in the air, but basically to synergize the way the burst works. And the way the burst works is Wrecking Blow, you can see at the bottom, grants you Empower for 3 seconds, increasing the damage of your light and heavy attacks by 40%. We're running Power Overload, and that's considered a light or heavy attack, and so we can add 40% onto our Power Overload, and you can see unbuffed it's 12k damage, you know, so we're going to hit players for 6k plus 40%, and so that's respectable. But all we'll do is, and if you also look at our Power Overload, it's only 21 ultimate. So if we were to go into a BG with 500 ultimate, like that's our rotation for most of the BG, right? It's just D-swing, overload, D-swing, overload, D-swing, overload. But anyways, let's look at some other things here. We are running Endless Fury. I'm still a little up in the air on the effectiveness of this versus the Executioner or the other, you know, two-hand execute. The reason being is this one's really nice. Someone's low and then they're trying to run away. I can't necessarily get to them for whatever reason. I can throw this on them and they end up getting killed and I get the credit for it, right? That's the biggest complaint about sorcerers, is their fury spamming or kill stealing with fury, right? And so while that's one of the biggest complaints about sorcerers, we are a sorcerer and we're going to benefit from that a little bit. So that's kind of nice. It gives us a ranged option too, and it falls in the Magicka line, which we set ourselves up for a little bit better Magicka sustain, and I'll show you how, because most of our abilities are Magicka, and it's just been working out well. We are running Haunting Curse. You can see unbuffed, this has 11k tooltip, so minimum it's going to hit players for 4 to 5k twice when it explodes, and so that's actually how we're going to line up our burst on people. We'll talk about it after you see the whole front bar. I just put Crystal Frags on here. If you want, this is the more aggressive version, okay? Crystal Frags on the bar is the more aggressive version. My buddy Bacon and I were just talking about it, and you know, if you want to line up more damage on somebody, Crystal Frags is the way to go, and we literally only use this when it procs, and when it procs it's going to hit, you can see down at the bottom, casting a magic ability has a 35% chance of causing your next Crystal Frag to be instant, dealing 66% more damage. And so when we buff up on this build, You can see that's 10k. That's a 10k crystal frag. Well, it's going to hit players 66% harder. So it's going to end up hitting them for, well, that means 16k NPCs, and it's going to hit enemy players for half that, 8k. Now, if mechanical acuity procs, it's going to be a guaranteed crit, so it'll probably hit them for 10k. So most of the time, when crystal frags is procced, if mechanical acuity is up, that frag is going to hit them for 10k. And our haunting curse is going to hit them for 5 to 8k. Our D-swing is going to hit them for 5k, and also line up our overload. And so that's what we do, is we have to prime them a little bit, right? As we're closing in on the target, we're getting close to them, and we know that we're gonna fight each other. We put haunting curse on them, we put endless fury on them, and if either one of those proc crystal frags, we'll put a frag into them. And if not, we reapply our armor buff, so that way we're moving at major expedition speed, and then we circle around them or strafe around them, line up a D-swing into an overload, D-swing, overload, D-swing, overload, and then this is exploding and this is proccing whenever, and then hopefully endless fury pops, right? And so plays somewhat like a mag Sorc, right? We're using a lot of the same abilities that a mag Sorc would use, but we're incorporating the wrecking blow into the empower, so our overload between the D swings hits 40% harder. So it's a lot of damage. It works out really well. Let's go to the back bar. So on the back bar, we are running Pierce. This kind of a flex spot, maybe if you wanted. Well, let's go back to the front. Sorry. Crystal Frags is a flex spot if you want to come off some damage and you want to go with a beefier setup. Might as well talk about this. Couple things. Number one, you could go with bound armaments, and this one all the way at the bottom, the most important part. While slotted, your max stamina is increased by 7%. Great, because we have fairly low max stam, and your light attacks deal 10% more damage. Well, our light attacks, when we hit power overload, are going to be hitting pretty hard, right? And if we're doing the combination that we just told you, so if I were to drop that down there, we're getting 40% additional damage on our light attack overloads from wrecking blow, and then we would be getting another 10% additional damage on top of that from having bound armaments just slotted, you know. So these are going to hit 50%. These are going to hit 50% harder against them, and so that ends up making our overload rotation between D-swings dangerous, right? And this is going off at any point, and then this is going off for free at any point, and then this is executing them. Okay, so you can watch the video at the end and kind of stick around and see that. Now, here's another option. If you think that you feel squishy as a medium armor, you want to go heavy, you could switch the armors on this, because Pellinel's is craftable and mechanical acuity is craftable. So you could make this a heavy armor build. Or you could keep it a medium armor build, get that agility passive from the medium armor for the extra 15% weapon damage, and then scale up your spell damage the way I've done, and run the other morph of this. And the other morph of this passively gives you minor resolve. Okay, so you'll get major resolve while this is up, almost an extra 6k resistances, and then minor resolve with the other morph of this just dropped here in the crystal frag spot, which means you'll have to work a little bit harder for your kills. I was dueling earlier with Bacon, and between landing a D-swing on somebody, when you're moving around at 30% movement speed, you take yourself out of the hitbox, or they take themselves out of the hitbox, and it's just really hard to line up. This isn't doing anything until they fall within execute range, so your only damage comes from your overload, your haunting curse going off, and D-swinging them, and that's probably usually not enough to get it done just by itself against the really tanky players. So that's where this comes in, and it helps out immensely. So I think in the BG I was not running around with this either, and I wish I would have, because there was a handful of times where I would have got people out so much quicker. But I'll probably get some BG footage utilizing this instead of you know, this there. So but anyways, I thought that was interesting. You have two ways to go on this. One of them. Also, another thing too is this morph that I have right here. Between every light attack that you could do, let's say you have 500 ultimate and you're standing back with overloads, you could just overload, and after the first overload, they're all crits after that because mechanical acuity procs and it's considered direct damage, so it's just crit, and then just before the mechanical acuity expires at the 5 seconds, trigger this, and each one of those are going to be crits. Just snap, and you have to make that noise too when it happens. Snap. But it's been interesting trying to figure out at CP, how do I make this work and how do I make it feel as smooth as some of the other classes, right? That's what makes hybrids hard to do. Pierce armor, it applies minor and major breach, so it strips them basically of 9k resistances. And excuse me, if you're not running this right now, you really should be. You find a spot if you're running sword and board to make this happen, because stripping someone of 9k resistances, you might run into a really tanky boy out there, you hit this on them, and now all of a sudden you can do damage to them somewhat. Okay, so look into getting that. Streak is my hard CC. It also helps me with my mobility and moving around. Now, I don't have a gap closer on this, and so sometimes we got to use this. Now, granted, the way we're playing is most of our abilities, our at least initial setup, can all be from ranged, right? This is all ranged, this is ranged, so I don't need to get up on somebody super quick, or if they start up on me, you know, they gap close to me and get the jump on me, I still have to go through a basic prep, you know, let's get this on them, let's get this on them, and then this, if this procs, let's trigger this, and then start our D swings. And I might have to apply those and switch my back bar and get my heels going, maybe streak through them, CC them, and be at range, turn around and apply those. And so it plays very different. It just plays very different, and you got to get used to that. So streak is our hard CC, and we're using it to advance in the opposite direction or get up on people. We're running critical surge. Critical surge, basically every time we crit, it's going to heal us every second. This synergizes with mechanical acuity very well. So our heals feel okay as long as we are doing damage. And for whatever reason, if we have to fall back onto our back bar, it's hard to turn it around without creating space, reapplying your buffs, and then turning and getting your offense applied on them and then going back into the fight. And so that's been one thing. Fortunately with streak, it's not hard to create space, right? You could streak twice and then turn around at ranged and apply everything. But anyways, critical surge synergizes really well with mechanical acuity. And resolving vigor, you can see it's got a fairly low tooltip. It will get up to like 15-16k tooltip on it, but I think this more so has to do with the problem of hybrids, right? You have very small max resource bases, small max magicka, small max stamina, and so I don't expect that this is going to have a super high tooltip on it. And we are running dark conversion because most of our abilities are magic abilities, and it's very easy for me to get stamina back in the tank, considering this is one of our few stamina costs other than breaking free or dodge rolling. Just channeling a heavy attack is putting stamina back in the tank outside of without power overload on. Obviously, channeling a heavy attack with power overload on is just going to do like the Emperor Palpatine, you know, unlimited power shock. So, but if we want to put stamina back in the tank, it's just channeling heavy attacks while we're maintaining our rotation and our buffs. So, but dark conversion fits the bill. It gives us health, gives us magicka instantly, and then gives us magic over time, and it costs stamina. And so that was the play for sure. I was waiting to see as I played this more which way I needed to go with this, and we definitely needed to go this route with it. Now, right now we are running Summon Charged Atronach. This is nice because you can create a line of sight anywhere. I can drop this out in the open, create a line of sight, and actually earlier when we were dueling, I would, whenever I was getting pressured, I would drop this and then just kind of strafe inside it and strafe around it. And if somebody really wants to kill me, they have to stand within it, taking the damage and trying to damage me. And so it works really nice. Also, if you're doing objectives in BGs, it's really nice to just drop it on the objective and take that free damage from everybody. And hopefully your allies hit the synergy on it, so they get Major Berserk. And so this is nice and situational. You do have a couple other options. So you can see we're still leveling a lot of stuff too. I just got into CP, took them into the BG after I put the build together, and I was like, yeah, this feels okay. I'll need a lot more practice on it. Anyways, a couple options here. You could run Negate, and then you could run either morph of Negate, and that's super valuable. So Negate is an option there. However, I think the route I'm going to go is look how much leveling I still have to do in Sky Shards, but I think the route I'm going to go is Shield Wall and then go Spell Wall. And Spell Wall actually reflects all ranged attacks against you for free for the duration, and blocks for free any physical damage or melee damage. And it's got a fairly low cost at 114. And so what you'll see is I will be able to hit Spell Wall, and while I'm in my Spell Wall, I will be building ultimate, and I might be able to squeeze off a round or two of overload in my basic rotation while blocking and reflecting for free. And so that's going to be the plan at some point to try and get to kind of test that and see if it's true, because Overload has one of the lowest costs of all ultimates in the game at 21. So I don't see why I wouldn't be able to get to that within that duration. So I know that I can do that. I can get overloads off when I drop this, you know. So because the duration on it's 21 seconds, and so it's really easy to get 21 ultimate in 21 seconds, right? And so that's a thing. But anyways, that's going to be the play there. And as far as weapons go, just two-hander, get all your passives for the two-hander. Sword and board, when you get to where you need to, get all the passives in sword and board. We are a 5 medium, 2 heavy. We're going to pick this up right now. There you go. So get all these passives eventually when you can afford it, and then your heavy armor, you only need the first 3. As far as race, we are a Nord because we like the rugged passives. It's 4k extra resistances, stalwart, more stamina, and ult gen, which is great. And so that's it. Watch the videos afterwards, and you'll see how that kind of all works. And like I said, I don't think we were running Crystal Frag, and I wish I was in that BG. We were running just the base morph of we were just running bound armor, and so it was just passively sitting on our bar not doing anything, and we were still getting people out with just this and this. So check that out. Let's jump into the CP and wrap it up. You'll kind of see here as we're going through things where we start running into a little bit of problems with CP. I am 810 CP. I'm actually like 12 or 1300 CP, but trying to assign these CP points was difficult. We ended up, after some testing, I went 64 points into Elemental Expert, so that way my shock damage and magic damage hit 13% harder, and I put 18 points into Bless for healing done. There is some lost points here. If I had an extra point from somewhere, I would put it in there to hit that 5% because it rounds down, but grabbing an extra point or two out of this isn't going to help. Maybe an extra point in Spell Erosion Physical. We might do that. 61 points into Mastered Arms. That way all of our direct damage done is increased by 21%, and everything that we do for the most part is direct damage outside of the damage over time or whatever from our armor buff, you know, just the lightning shock damage that pulses. But our Wrecking Blow is direct damage, the Execute is direct damage, Crystal Frags is direct damage, and Haunting Curse is direct damage, and Overload is direct damage. So this is how we buff that. We've got 63 points into Staff Expert. We are not using a staff, but if you read the very last part, increase your damage done with light and heavy attacks as well as Overload. And so this was going to be how we buffed our overload damage to make it significant. Since overload's only 21 ultimate, we make it a very serious part of our rotation regularly. And so it was worth the expense of buffing that damage by 30% in the CP scenario. 64 points into Mighty for an extra 13% physical damage. And basically our Puncture and our Wrecking Blow. That's it. They're buffed by 13%, and I didn't want the Wrecking Blow to hit like a noodle when we hit them, and so we needed to buff it up a little bit to be somewhat respectable. 62 points in Ironclad. It reduces all of the direct damage that we take by 23%. Most of the heaviest hitting abilities in the game are going to be direct damage. The ones that really chunk off your life. There is a lot of dot damage in the game as well right now, and I would say that we don't have a way to cleanse that currently, and so dot damage, I think one of my deaths in the BG was from just ridiculous procs, and there was nothing I could do about it. You can't heal through it, you can't do anything, so GG. But 62 points in Ironclad, 77 points in the Spell Shield for an extra 5,000 resistances, and 77 points in the Medium Armor Focus for an extra 5,000. Now if you take this 5,000 and you put it side by side with the 4,000 resistances I get for being a Nord, that's a 9,000 resistance swing. I have 9,000 more resistances than some other medium armor wearers, and so that helps a lot. It really does. So if you wanted to allot some different points, you could, and address the on this particular build, if you wanted to try and address the damage over time or proc sets that are going on, you'd probably want to put some points into Thick Skin. But I do not put points into this normally. If I wanted my back bar to have an extra 1,500 resistances, I would put 15 and 15 to hit this 30. While you have a shield or frost staff equipped, your spell and physical resistance is increased by 1,500, but it's one of those things. If you want to do that, feel free to do that. And I've explained it in all my videos, but ultimately just going this route and going into your armor and going in spell shield makes you feel more tanky. I've tested it, and other people are switching to it now, and they're finding that out as well. They're like, yeah, it made a world of difference for me too. 44 points in a quick recovery, so our healing received is increased by 10%. 1 point in a Siphoner, so that way they have one extra thing to cleanse. 44 points into Warlord, so that way you are going to be CC'd and you will need to break free. And I think this is important for us considering our max stamina is on the low, right? So definitely don't want to skimp out on that. 77 points into Mooncalf for an extra 14% stamina recovery, and same for Arcanist. 23 points into Tenacity, increase the magicka and stamina of your fully charged heavy attacks. So like we said, if I need to get stamina back in the tank, I'm running at a dangerously low stamina. If I'm in a low stamina area and I need to swing some heavy attacks, it's important to have Tenacity to put that little bit extra stamina in the tank to get you out of that danger window. So 48 points into Tumbling. Our back bar is block cast capable, however, because we have Streak, we just want to create space. And again, most of our abilities are ranged abilities, or at least a ranged setup. Like we get the Haunting Curse on them, we get the Fury on them, we hit them with the Crystal Frag, we hit them with the Overload, we streak to them, we de-swing, or Wrecking Blow, Overload, Wrecking Blow, Overload, Haunting Curse goes off, and just the way it plays, it's a long, painful death if you're going to be block casting on this build too much. Don't block cast, create space, turn and burn, turn around and open fire. So Tumbling, though, to avoid damage is definitely the play. So if you streak, tumble, streak, dodge roll, and avoid what damage you can, then turn and burn on them. Okay, so that is it. Stick around for that BG footage, and If you guys are interested, I'll try and get more BG footage of this out just so you can see more gameplay of it and see how it plays. If you want to see PVE content, me soloing world bosses or soloing vet dungeons or soloing regular dungeons with this, you want to see how it does in dungeons, let me know in the comments, and I'll have no problem jumping into a dungeon and just going through it by myself and showing you guys what it can do. It's very strong in PvE, and in PvP you have to be smart and pick your fights, where and when and how to do it. Like I said, dots right now are this build's fatal flaw, I guess. If they dot you up, you don't have a way to cleanse it, and it really chops into you and puts pressure on your vigor. And that's one of the things is these are our two heals. Vigor is just a hot, right? That amount of healing, well, 15-16k coming in over 4 seconds. And it's possible that, especially right now, you get hit with multiple dots by one person, multiple procs by one person using one button, and it completely out damage the heal that you have coming in from resolving vigor. Vigor, your heal is not enough to heal through it. You cannot sustain through one person pressing one button and applying procs. And then you find yourself trying to get some dark conversions off for that 4k heal there, and you need to hope that you have enough stamina in the tank to do that. Also, while you're channeling this, because you can see it's a 1 second channel, if you're hit by something that stuns you, or you're if basically they bash you or do anything to prevent you from doing that full cast, now you're stunned. You know, and so that's a problem right now. And also, critical surge, while nice, those heals are nice. They're only nice if you're being offensive. If you're actually doing work on them, that's when you sustain very well with just these. You know, sometimes just the heal from this is enough to get you through fights, you know, if you're being ultra aggressive and their damage is lacking. So anyways, that's my 2 cents on Thor. You can see we've got Mjolnir, one-hander, and we're using Captain America's shield, and then there is Stormbreaker right there, and we're using the two-hander. So Thor hybrid. All right, check out the BG footage. Everybody be safe out there. Bye.